That's not too big.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Ossinin's Town Board Work Session and Special Meeting for Tuesday, December 5th. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call? No, we don't. We just do that. Okay. So we're starting tonight with our work session. I'll hold off on announcements until our special meeting, which will be a little bit later. First up, I would like to invite Mark Teelking, who's the CEO of Energize New York and Energy Improvement Corporation, to join us. We asked Mark to come tonight to discuss the revisions that the EIC is suggesting we make to our PACE, or Property Assessed Clean Energy Local Law. The town board passed the original law back in 2012, but recent changes at the state level will allow us to change our regulations at the town level to make PACE financing more accessible. I'm proud to say that as a member of the EIC, PACE financing has made a difference in our local community, and the work we have done at the state to get these changes in place are very exciting for this product. We've been reviewing this, and our council has spoken with Mark, and I'm confident that she believes that we will be in good shape to adopt the changes going forward along with the other municipal entities statewide. Mark, please come and join us and talk a little bit about PACE.
The introduction. Sure. You took about a quarter of my speech. So,
Sorry.
we're good to go here. But I'm Mark Teelking. I'm the executive director of what's called the Energy Improvement Corporation, or more commonly known as Energize New York. The Energy Improvement Corporation is a not-for-profit local development corporation, and we're owned and controlled by local governments that wish to offer the public benefit of PACE financing. And I'm joined here with Sarah Smiley, who's our Director of Membership. So the public benefit of PACE financing is authorized by state statute. Article 5L is the state statute that back in 2009 was passed to allow municipalities to provide this public benefit of financing for improvements to buildings related to energy efficiency and renewable energy. These improvements are very beneficial to the community. The state figured this was an important step forward to enabling wide-scale adoption of energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements if the municipalities could provide steps along the way like financing. Financing is usually the biggest barrier to seeing wide-scale adoption of energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements. So they modeled, the New York State PACE law modeled essentially how sidewalk improvements and facade improvements and other improvements are allowed in local governments by, again, allowing municipalities to provide capital and then have that capital repaid through a line on the tax bill. The Energy Improvement Corporation was formed in 2011 by 14 municipalities in northern Westchester. Ossining was the second member of the EIC. The whole idea was to not have to recreate the wheel 14 times to provide PACE financing across these municipalities. Since then, New York State has funded us to actually expand across the whole state. So what started here in Westchester now is across New York State. I just actually came back from a public hearing in Suffolk County, and they successfully did what you're about to do, which is pass the local law, the amendments to the local law. But the idea is, again, that Article 5L enables local governments to provide this public benefit PACE financing, and the local law allows that to be done in the local community. So in September of 2017, just 2 months ago, Governor Cuomo signed amendments to Article 5L. And that necessitates changes at the local level. So what we're talking about today is to amend the local law that was passed in 2012 and have that local law then be passed, and then also amendments to our contract between EIC as well as the town. This will then allow us to roll out PACE financing according to the new Article 5L that was just passed in September. So again, many of our members view this as housekeeping, frankly. Whenever a state law changes, the local law has to change. What's interesting, and Supervisor Levenberg touched on this, we have completed one project in Ossining But what's important to note is that we had 22 projects that did not get completed. And that was because a lot of the impediments that were in the existing state statute have now been removed. So we feel like this is not only a housekeeping measure, but also will provide much more benefit to your community going forward. And we think it's actually going to expand quite a bit the adoption of clean energy here in Ossining. So I could keep going on the specifics if that's useful, or I could.
The only thing I was interested in maybe having you talk about is that there's one issue that where we could take up something that would give us a little bit more the ability to be a little bit more refined in our analysis of who the town accepts. Is that right? That we have.
Well, yeah, ever since, so the existing agreement between EIC and the municipality always has had an allowance for the municipality to take more control over how the public benefit is offered in the community. And it's called a modification of the program. So that is available today. It's available under the new or the amended local law as well. Some of the things that have been introduced in other municipalities are things like restricting pace away from gas stations, for example. Not to single them out, but some municipalities have trouble foreclosing on gas stations if there's contamination. There's another way maybe to address that issue is just making sure that the town is comfortable with the projects that we're potentially financing by looking at the environmental record of that property and reporting back to Energize New York as whether or not you're comfortable with that based on an environmental review that you provide. So there are certain ways to modify the program, and that is, in essence, we're controlled by our municipality. So if there is a direction you want to take by restricting or even amplifying how you want to show PACE financing to your community, that's available to you.
All right, so in that case, I just open it up to the board for questions.
All right, this is just amending the one that we already have, that we've been working with.
Yes.
Right, and Christy's seen it and she's okay with it?
Yeah, I've reviewed it. The changes seem to be in line with, as Mark was saying, what was amended in the state statute. And like was discussed, this is something that's already been in effect, both the local law and the agreement, and it's something that's standard across all of the municipalities that are involved. I believe you said there are 40 of them.
Yep.
So they all have the same documentation, and that allows EIC to represent all of the municipalities.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't had a chance to, since I just got this, read the changes, but as long as you've read it and are okay with it, then I'm good.
Well, I believe there's also going to be a public hearing on this next week, correct? 2 weeks? 26th. Okay. So you do have time to review it. Nothing, this is just an informational work session, and nothing's being decided tonight, so you certainly still have time to review.
Thank you.
So, right, so I guess one of the questions just to think about is if we would like to, because I don't think we did adopt that, I guess, whatever,
there are no modifications.
Modifications.
No
right?
modifications.
We didn't adopt the local law with modifications, or is it the local law that we adopt with modifications, or the agreement?
It's actually neither. The agreement allows you to request our board to make modifications, which then we respond by saying your modifications are adopted, and then we adopt that for the town of Ostining's underwriting process.
I see. So neither the local law nor the agreement is a letter, like a cover letter or something like that, that we just.
You would send a letter along with the signed municipal agreement.
I see.
Saying we want to modify based on these actions or these elements.
Okay.
We could certainly guide you on what to use for that, because
Yeah.
we have several municipalities that have modified the program in the past.
Right. I think that would be really helpful to
Sure.
get a couple of those, just so we can have that for us to think about if that would be something that we feel would be more.
We'd want to include.
Yeah. Well, right, and it wouldn't be included in the law; it would just be included in a letter, and we'd have an agreement with EIC.
That's right.
You discuss it like you discuss any action you want to take. You'd adopt a resolution and authorize, presumably, council to draft a letter indicating which modifications you would request based upon the recommendations from EIC and the discussion of the board and the public.
Okay. And that can be done at any time, I presume.
Anytime.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that's great.
One thing I would add is that you do have to pass a resolution to also amend the municipal agreement that we have with you. I noticed on the agenda, it was just the local law,
Okay,
but just to make sure that's concurrent so that we're not held up along the way
Sure.
in making both amendments or both documents being amended at the same time.
sure.
You have to hold a public hearing to amend the local law, so there's nothing to preclude at the same meeting if and when you decide to adopt a resolution regarding the local law to also have a separate or combined in one resolution also authorizing the supervisor to sign the agreement.
Do we know how many people took advantage of PACE financing during our whole Solarize program, or?
So PACE isn't there's no residential PACE at this point?
There's no residential pays, but we did have a commercial solarized component.
Right.
And the project that did take advantage of that was TerraTile.
Mhm.
So that's the one project that was completed, and it was inspired by Solarize. I can't say that was directly through
Right.
the program, but it was inspired by that. So it was very successful. I think they're very happy.
But I mean, statewide, I mean, we're seeing more and more, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about some of the recent projects, some of the
Sure.
types of projects that have utilized PACE and what they've been for?
Yeah, we've completed 19 projects across the state. The most recent one is an assisted living facility in Albany County. They replaced about $300,000 worth, actually $200,000 worth of lighting. And again, very successful project. We upgraded the heating and cooling and lighting for the Drum Hill facility in Peekskill. And that actually leveraged a bonding authority that we received from Westchester County to lower the cost of that project to right around 3% for 20 years. That bonding authority is available to residents here or properties in the town of Austining that are affordable housing and not-for-profits as well. In fact, just last week, the county authorized an additional $4 million of bonding authority for that very same purpose. So we have a total of about $7 million worth of low-cost bonding authority for those not-for-profit and affordable housing units here in Austining. Another project that was very successful was the first project we did, which was a farm up in Orange County. It's a dairy farm, and again, they were. The story on that one is that they moved from Pennsylvania to New York, had doubled the electricity costs, was able to install solar and bring down those costs significantly, where they're making about $20,000 a year on top of what they're paying on the financing. So typically our projects are energy efficiency. We have some solar as well. They're all pretty successful in the sense that either the property owners facing end-of-life issues with their heating or cooling equipment, they don't have the capital to put in the more efficient equipment, so this allows that to happen, or they're considering solar, which again is a high upfront cost, and this allows them to move forward with that. And then again, especially in areas like Con Ed territory where electricity prices are very expensive, there's usually very good economics, and that's what TerraTile found out. They were able to save quite a bit of money. So I could go on. There's lots of great projects, but
And I
looking
mean, just
forward
other
to-
local ones, I think Bethel, isn't that one, or an A-home?
we've completed 2 A-home projects. That's right. So again, similar issues. End of life. One of the projects, they put a lot of insulation in the building because their tenants were uncomfortable. Now they're able to keep those tenants. So great savings. These aren't giant projects. Those are like about $30,000 in total. But again, very successful for them, especially since they're providing affordable housing in those communities.
Can you just speak briefly about some of the impediments you mentioned that were changed at the state level? and
Sure.
That just to kind of discuss what we're trying to improve upon at this stage.
So yeah, the state statute had a 10% cap on total amounts of financing, 10% as it relates to the appraised value of the property. And we're finding a lot of projects were walking away because they couldn't finance more than that. So the state removed that cap and gives the authority to set that cap to essentially the municipalities or their constituted authority, which we are. And so our board has taken action to set that at 35%, which we feel like a lot of those projects that were here in Austining that we could not say yes to or they walked away was because they could not finance all of the project. So that's a big one that was changed. Another big one is that, I don't know if you are familiar with community solar projects where there's one facility which then supplies power to multiple properties. We don't have a product ready for that, but the state statute barred us from even thinking about it. So we now actually have the ability to develop a product, which had to be approved by our members, but at the same time, now we can actually think about that, and that has a big potential, especially for properties that can't put solar on the roof because they have a bad exposure or they don't have a roof that's big enough. So that's a very important one. We're adopting a savings to investment ratio test that NYSERDA has adopted. NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Authority. Up till now, we've been using a more restrictive test, which has, again, disqualified quite a few properties. NYSERDA has endorsed this, well, less restrictive, but also very robust savings to investment test, so we're adopting that. The other component is that we're able to provide construction phase financing. Up till now, we've had to only supply the capital at the end of the project. So a lot of projects couldn't even get going because they have no capital to even begin construction. So that's a big change as well. And finally, we've been unable to offer PACE across the state to municipalities with lower credit ratings. And that's because we were only allowed to source reserves from federal sources. The original 14 communities that formed EIC actually applied for the federal government to get grants. That's what forms up our current facility. But we can't get any more federal dollars. So the state statute was changed to allow state dollars as well as federal dollars to make up the reserves. So now we're able to expand PACE to all municipalities in New York State. So long story short, a lot of improvements. We've learned a lot, certainly, since Ossining, again, was the second municipality to join. You'll be the third to adopt the amendments. So it's very timely and fits with the leadership that certainly Ossining has shown in the past. So congratulations on moving forward.
Thank you. Well, we still have to have a public hearing. And
That's true.
All those sorts
That's
of
true,
things, but barring any negative feedback from the public, when we do have that public hearing, which I can't anticipate because I see nobody in the audience who I believe is even here just to hear about this. I can be wrong, but maybe there's one or two. I have a feeling, we do have people watching at home, and we're very happy for that. We hope that they will thoughtfully consider any input that they have and provide it to us, whether in writing or at the public hearing on December 26th. And thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
On your leadership for the for the EIC, and also thanks to Catherine Honig, outgoing COO,
Yes.
who had a lot to do also with the changes that were able to get passed through the legislature and signed by Governor Cuomo. So thanks for all that stuff.
Yes,
Very
and
appreciative and for coming out tonight.
at any time, and I want to point out again Sarah Smiley, who might be here on the 26th to help out.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a great night. No, there weren't any other questions, were there? No. I'm sorry, I didn't go over that. Okay. No. All right. Fantastic. So our second item up for discussion tonight pertains to a section of New York State law that the town board may want to consider implementing. I'm going to invite our town assessor, Fernando Gonzalez, to join us at the table in case we want to talk a little bit with you. So the law that we're taking a look at is one that similar to what the village adopted in 2009. We've just come off revaluing all of the properties in the town of Ossining. And we have many condominium properties in the town, including in the two villages.
Fernando.
And we've been hearing a lot from homeowners as well as condominium owners about the issue of adopting the homestead option. This is something that town has an ability to consider adopting after they have revalued properties, and we as a board chose not to consider adoption of it in the first year of the reval, which was 2016. We're now in 2017, and we've done a reassessment that isn't as robust as the first round, but is still considered a full reassessment. And the state has confirmed that we're at 100% of value. And that means that we have an option to consider homestead again. We recently had a town hall meeting, and we heard from a lot of folks, homeowners as well as condominium owners, about the issue of homestead. And we brought in some folks, some experts from the Benjamin Center and SUNY New Paltz, who had studied the impact that homestead has had on specifically on Kingston, but they've also been looking at it statewide and the impact that homestead has had. And I mean, I know I'm speaking somewhat for myself, but I made a statement at the end of the meeting, which I think somewhat sums up the board's thinking on this. And obviously, board, this is a work session, anybody can chime in. I think this is, our thinking on this has been that we don't necessarily believe that this legislation that was put into place by the state to incentivize condominium ownership many moons ago is really fair. However, we also don't necessarily think that homestead is the right remedy for this, and that it seems to have had some unintended consequences in other municipalities in New York State, especially ones who've had it in place for quite some time, that ultimately have a negative impact on the tax base, specifically on commercial properties, because the rates grow differently, and the rate for residential properties, or which would be in a homestead class, tend to grow faster than those in the commercial property piece of the pie. So the piece of the pie, the commercial piece of the pie, not growing as fast means that the tax rates for that property have to go up faster and higher to maintain the balance of commercial, non-homestead, and homestead properties. That being said, we've also learned recently that in another municipality, there are other classes of properties that are similar to condominiums, specifically homeowners associations, or I always forget what PUD stands for. I don't know why I have a mental block against it. Planned Unit Development, the PUDs we call them. And we do have some PUDs in the town, in the village of Briarcliff, in the unincorporated, as well as in the, I'm not sure if, is this the right? No, this is wrong spreadsheet. Hold on. I just opened up the wrong folder. But it looks so similar. Anyway, we have properties in, or PUDs that are similar in many ways, thank you, to condominiums, but they're taxed at the same rate as single-family homes or residential properties. In Mamaroneck, we heard recently that this type of homeowner association petitioned the Attorney General and then petitioned the town board, and was allowed to switch and become a condominium. I don't think any of us are going to want to stop them from becoming a condominium. However, I don't think, again, that our board, and I am saying, I'm speaking for the board, but please chime in if you disagree with me, anybody, that none of us want to go backwards. None of us want to go in the other direction. So again, just because we haven't chosen to adopt homestead doesn't mean that we think the current situation or the assessment or how these properties are assessed is fair, right, or good, but we don't think homestead is the right answer. We believe that working to pass legislation and maybe looking into other alternatives to homestead would be something that we could move forward on if we could find a solution that would work and not go backwards, not turn back the hands of time. We do think that the PUDs asking now to move into this other class does not make sense, which is why we're considering adopting legislation similar to what the Village of Ossining did to take advantage of 581C. Yes, no, maybe that's what it's called.
581
in property in state.
1C.
property law, 581
It's
C.
real property
580
tax law 581(1)(c)
Okay,
and real property law 339(y)(f).
great. And so would you like to comment a little bit on that?
Those numbers aren't enough.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, the state legislature acknowledging what the supervisor was discussing about the potential tax implications of a unit or a series of units of residential development that have been assessed as a dwelling unit that's not a condominium, and then converting to a condominium, not necessarily with the main intention of the lower tax rates, but that would be the effect that it could potentially have. And so they authorized every local municipal corporation that is a taxing unit to adopt legislation, or if it's the school district, a resolution that would preclude these residential dwelling units that were previously taxed at as a different type of entity, not a condominium, that then converted to condominiums, from applying the condominium tax rate. And so it's basically just maintaining the status quo with that going forward, despite what that may happen. If you've never been assessed at as another type of dwelling unit, if you just form a condominium at the outset, it doesn't apply. If you're a currently existing condominium, it doesn't apply to you. It's merely in the situations like the supervisor was discussing, where you have an existing dwelling unit in a different form that then converts to a condominium. And so it's pretty straightforward. It's, as you saw from the way the village did it, and I looked at some other municipalities. I believe Clarkstown did it, or at least they noticed a public hearing for it. I believe the city of Peekskill did as well. And the language in the local laws are pretty standard, just acknowledging the state statutes and stating that in furtherance of what they're authorized to do under state law, that this converted condominium concept will not reap the benefits of the way condos are currently taxed outside of homestead.
Discussion.
Could you repeat that? Jesus. That's why I think
Want it in a nutshell?
when we have our town hall meetings, there's so many people objecting to the homestead. I don't see, I don't know. Everybody's afraid of it.
No one who is opposed to homestead, I can't say, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I don't believe that anyone who is currently opposed to homestead would be impacted by this, because they're currently condo owners who are being taxed at the lower rate. And so this is basically just to address the situation with PUDs and the like, townhomes that would convert to condominium status who don't currently have it, to then reap the benefits of that lower tax rate. So it's just maintaining the status quo.
Right, so things that were built as a townhouse or something else that want to call themselves condominiums so that they get a lower tax rate. And it seems that there was a couple of municipalities that all of a sudden they did that, and it really shifted the burden even more to the single family homeowners. And we're trying to prevent that. If you were built as A, we're just going to make sure you stay as A. And that's what this law does.
And yeah, I mean, you can still convert to a condominium, and there are other reasons why people do that. And nothing about this stops people from doing that if they want to, and if it's right for them in that situation. And it's not an easy process. You have to go to the state. It's an in-depth process. But if for whatever reason a group decides they want to go down that route, they're welcome to. They just can't be taxed at the lower rate. So there's one less benefit to doing it than there otherwise would have been.
Okay.
Just to be clear, because I see somebody in our audience tonight who is here and has been a representative for Rosecliff, which is a PUD in the village of Briarcliff. I do want to reiterate that even though we had a lot of very loud people who came out to oppose homestead, we have received many postcards in favor of homestead. And we went and retallied the numbers. And now I can't say that we actually went through and sorted So I don't know what, there's definitely duplication in these numbers. These are not pure numbers at all. This is not like we said, okay, we got 2 postcards from this one, or this represents however many people. But we received 277 postcards in favor of Homestead, 71 names on the Rosecliff petition in favor of Homestead, 1 letter in favor of Homestead, 21 emails in favor of Homestead. And again, just to reiterate, there's definitely going to be overlap in that. I'm sure there is, but that doesn't mean that there isn't also. We received 73 postcards opposed to Homestead, 36 letters opposed to Homestead, and 164 emails opposed to Homestead. So again, those are the updated numbers as of Friday, and they are not. This is not a pure survey or of any sort. It's just numbers and information, and we can try to go through those. We just haven't yet done that.
And this is a work session and initial discussion. If the board were inclined to move forward with this, it would, as I said, it would have to be done by adoption of local law, which means there would have to be a public hearing. So there would be an opportunity for public comment regarding this.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, when the Benjamin Center brought it up, I think it's important for us to enact this so there isn't like a mass exodus of people changing whatever their development is into a condominium just for the sole purpose of changing it to
Get the tax.
get the tax benefit. You know,
And we do have our assessor here. And Fernando, would you like to move the microphone closer to where you are? Number one. And then secondly, would you be so kind as to comment on what the impact would be on the overall assessed value if all of the planned unit developments, for example, were to request that they be converted to condos, and we did not have something enacted to
And I think you have to press the button up.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
The other way around. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, basically, in the town of Austin, we have 495 units in planned unit developments, of which 213 are in the village of Briarcliff Manor, 169 are in the village of Austin, and 113 are in the town outside. That represents about $240 million worth of taxable assessed value, which, by the way, is approximately about 5% of the total taxable assessed value in the town in general. Typically, when developments like this or planned unit developments such as this become a condominium complex, the methodology by which they will be assessed would be utilizing the income approach. And just like we see and we experience with the condominiums, the assessed values based on the income approach are about 40 to 60% of what they're selling for. So basically you could assume a loss in taxable assessed value of about $120 million if every one of these units would be converted to a condominium type of ownership and would be assessed under the 339Y law as required. So of course the impact would be felt by everyone on the tax rate, because the tax rate will go up in order to levy the same amount of taxes. But to put it in perspective, again, it's 5%. The planned unit developments represent 5% of the total assessed value for the town in general. And of course, it represents more in the village of Briarcliff Manor, because the village of Briarcliff Manor have about 62% of this planned unit development. Now, this is not based on number of units. This is based in taxable assessed value. By the way, some of these units are townhouses and some are standalone single-family homes like Rosecliff. So it's a mixture of the type of property, but basically the change in the type of ownership would prompt the change in the methodology that would be utilized to value the properties for assessment purposes.
again, does anybody have any comments, or is the board inclined to move forward with this to, at our next meeting, call for a public hearing to put forth this legislation as, and consider it adopting this local law?
I think we should put it forth for a public hearing.
Yeah, I think we should go for public hearing, because otherwise you hear from the public.
Are you sure? You gotta do that. That's the law. Yes?
Yes.
All right. Then let's move on. Thank you very much. You're all set. You're done.
Thank you, Fernando.
We will consider continuing to move forward on that. And next up, we are reaching the end of the 2018 budgeting process. And I'm glad to say that by working closely with our finance office and department heads, we've crafted what I believe is a tight, responsible, and efficient budget for next year, which continues the town tradition of the tax cap compliance. I want to thank this board for working so hard to help the departments think outside the box and being agreeable to trying new ways to think about our structure. I also want to thank Maddie Zahach, our budget director, and Dale Ferreira, the town's deputy controller, for keeping track of our staff and programming lines and for working with, or should I say around, our new accounting system, Munis, to get it in a user-friendly format for our board and our public. Extra special thanks to Dale for that, and Maddie for enjoying it. The board has an Excel sheet listing the changes that have been that have come out of our meetings with the department heads, as well as some updated figures from our contractors. We expect to adopt the town's 2018 budget at our next meeting, which happens to be a morning meeting on December 11th. And the reason that is our regular meeting time is because Tuesday night happens to be the first night of Hanukkah, and we were not able to pull together a Monday night meeting. We received very little feedback from the public about the budget, so I'm hoping that means that the budget is basically something that is supported, since we haven't heard anything specific. But it's still worth giving everyone a heads up that the budget will be adopted at an unusual time for all those who are keeping track. And without further ado, Maddie, our budget director, Zahach, would you be so kind as to highlight maybe some of the changes from the recommended to the adopted, and a brief description as to why, and then if we have any questions.
Sure, thank you. So the board has these 3 pages, which I believe, as we did last year, we'll post on the town website once it's a done deal and the budget's adopted, just so everyone can follow along. But we had, first and foremost, our CSEA contract was signed. So it was ratified by the union, and this board approved it. So we have salary increases for all of those employees. Most of them are in the general fund, which used to be called the 10 fund, now called the 100 fund. So you'll see that all the way at the very top. That money was accounted for elsewhere in the budget. And you'll see we have not made any change to... Each fund is a zero, basically. So we basically just moved money around to account for all of the changes that we have. So we're not increasing taxes, decreasing taxes more than what you were originally given. It's the same level, but just a little bit of tweaking within each fund to get there. One of the other things of note, which you'll see in 4 different places in the budget, is the health stipend. So we offer to our employees who choose not to take the town's health insurance sort of a buyout. And the buyout is great for us because it saves us about $25,000 a year in having to pay for that employee's health insurance. So in this most recent CSEA contract, we had a little bit of an increase to that buyout, which bought us several more people coming off of the medical insurance. And that is, you know, we can look at it on a year-by-year basis to make sure that it still makes fiscal sense to offer it. So that's one of the things that you'll see in here in addition to those salaries. For the most part, we broke it down by department, so you can see based on all the department head meetings that we had, there were very few things that came up that the board said, you know, we really want to take another look at this. Most of it was the department saying, hey, we forgot this contractor is going to raise our, you know, fee 5% for next year. We got an updated quote from him. So going through in the court, you see that For stenographer services, we've noticed that they've used a little bit more, than they should have based on, year to date. So we increased that by a little bit. And the same is true basically across the board. There's many notations of, based on 2017 year to date. So we either adjusted the line up or down just a little bit. There were a couple things that we were able to take out, including the carding line from the town clerk's budget because we're no longer responsible to pay it. Another issue in the senior nutrition program, something that was born from the CSEA contract negotiation, we're increasing the amount of uniform stipends that we give out by 1. So you'll see that there. And also the nutrition bid for the food, which I think the board is going to approve later this evening, went up just a little bit. I think it's about 50 cents a meal. So we wanted to make an adjustment there just to make sure that we were covered. We also have a gentleman who serves as a custodian / groundskeeper for our parks during the summer. He goes around and, cleans up the garbage and makes sure the bathrooms are in order. Now that we have the Cedar Lane Pavilion up and running again, now that's a 3rd pavilion and 3rd bathroom that he's going to need to take a look at. So we wanted to add a little bit of money in there to make sure at $50 per event that there was a little bit of extra for any events that would happen there. And that is it for the general fund, unless anyone has any questions.
I don't think we increased the revenue line, but we had probably previously done that for Cedar Lane Pavilion, but we do anticipate additional revenue because of bringing the pavilion back online. Just that we think will more than offset the cost of the custodial services.
Okay.
Yeah, on the top one's GoTV.
Yes. So we spoke with the GoTV board, who informed us that they were going to be changing their rates up a little bit, which we had already sort of heard through the grapevine was going to happen. But we already had, a little bit in to account for that, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough. So we added that in as well.
The good news is that they're increasing their ability to serve the community and to really get around and cover lots of great events. So we think that this is a good thing for everybody.
They are everywhere.
They are everywhere, and they're
They're
doing a great
everywhere.
job of covering all of the different events around town. So.
Then in the 200 fund, we had similar things with the salaries, as we discussed. The health stipend, that was another change, one in that fund. We were actually able to take $2,000 out that we had in the budget for repairs to the building inspector's vehicle, because now that we have the Nissan Leaf, we don't need to worry about fixing that up anymore. On the second page, more of the same. With the zoning and planning boards, it was really just some moving around because we added lines into the physical budget to offer conference lines for both of those boards. So now the zoning board has their own budget to go to conferences and the planning board has their own as well. I know that this board has really wanted to make certain that there's enough money for training for those boards in particular because of how many issues have been coming before them in the past couple of years. So we wanted to make sure that they were well taken care of there as well.
In terms of training, they don't get paid.
In terms of training,
That's
yeah.
another important point of interest is that we recently actually saw a breakdown of other municipalities that do pay their, I think, zoning and planning board. We do not, and many municipalities do not. We do not, but it's very important that they do get the training. So it's certainly worth it for boards, for town boards and town, for town governments to make sure that zoning and planning get,
Up to speed, yeah.
money,
Have the knowledge that they need.
have money in the budget to get the training that they need.
And I've been at the last couple of zoning board meetings, and Sandy, the secretary, has been collecting certifications to make sure that everyone's getting their proper training.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
Okay, so that's it for the 200 fund, which covers the building, zoning, planning, and police services. Does anyone have any question on those? Okay, then going into the 310 or the highway fund, we had just a couple of slight changes. Most of them were just when we sat around the table with Mr. O'Connor and just said, hey, we're looking at the year-to-date numbers. We can probably knock a couple $100s off here and there. So you'll see that on the electricity, printing and postage, diesel fuel. We had not used very much by earlier in the month when we met with Mr. O'Connor. So we were able to take a significant amount off there. And then also the line for the equipment. You see there's a rather large number being moved from the administration line. that's really just moving it from one place to the other. The equipment line and the administration line should be for like copy machines and things like that. So we moved it to actually the garage line.
Why did our electricity go down? Did we put?
We have LED fixtures in the garage and also in the highway administration building. And it was not as dramatic a drop off as we had expected to see, but we have seen a significant savings after having installed those. Okay, and that's it for the highway fund, unless there are any questions. Okay. Then moving into the cemetery fund, we had discussed with Mr. Connolly, he's our superintendent of cemeteries. His revenues were doing very well this year. We said, hey, are there a couple of pieces of equipment you were planning on getting next year that you could just buy this year because we have a little bit of extra money? And he said, yes, I can. So we made a couple of changes in there. We also added $2,200 for unemployment insurance. When we have seasonal employees, they generally file for unemployment, so we want to make sure we have enough money in there for that. And we added money into the life insurance line because for whatever reason there was not any money there last year. Any questions?
It was important to have life insurance in a cemetery.
Wah, wah. The sewer fund, we neglected to put in a raise for Mr. O'Connor, and that affects the sewer fund in this way. Mr. O'Connor's salary is paid for primarily out of the highway fund, but there's a very small percentage of his salary that's also paid out of the sewer fund. So when we made the adjustment for him in the highway fund, we had to do the same in the sewer fund.
I'm just thinking of what he said the other night.
Oh, stop.
And finally, which is something that this board knows a little bit about, maybe a month ago, the town authorized us to go out to bid for the refuse and recycling contract, which we did. The bidder who came in is a bit higher than what we had in the budget, so we had to make an adjustment based on what our projection had been, based on what it's actually going to be. But that is the full number that's in there right now, so we are all set.
Can I ask a question? How do the people? How do you get your bids out? How do you get people to know about them?
So we prepare the packet that has all of the instructions, which goes to the town clerk. She advertises in, I believe, the Journal News and the Gazette when we go out for bid. And we also made sure that some of the folks who work for the town and also the village DPW could sort of get the word out that we were looking for people. We put it on the town website as well, so that's.
No, because
We're not able to mail it to different carding companies or.
Well, they would know if.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, if that's permissible to just kind of send it around to whomever.
Send a bid request to like every carding company in the general area.
I mean,
I'm just asking if it's something that's done.
there are statutory requirements for how notice is supposed to be provided. I think you don't want to get into a situation of it being suggested you singled out
Like cherry picking.
certain companies over others. I mean, yes, if that was a perfect system of identifying every specific entity or business, but I don't think that would be the case, and I think that could just get messy.
So even though you did all the other notifying with the Journal and the Gazette, it's still not recommended to send it to all the, I'm just saying because we got one bid.
Right.
So, I'm just wondering how we can increase the number of bidders.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to consider alternate methods, it's something we can look into. It hasn't really been discussed up to this point. So, I don't think a bid has officially been accepted yet. So if that's something this board wanted to consider, you're completely within your right to. Has the bid been accepted, or there was discussion?
We're pretty close to accepting it because we had, actually, since we only had one bidder, we consulted with council to find out if we could negotiate with them, and the bid was quite high. We managed to negotiate a lower price with them, significantly lower price with the bidder, and then they gave us, sort of a path to, a smoothing path to get to where they felt they needed to be, because they have, it's a company that's worked with the town for quite a few years, came in and their current bid is still lower than I think what we were paying 10 years
When
ago.
they took over
When they
10
took
years ago,
over,
yeah.
They reduced our rate greatly. They've saved us probably hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last few years. At least I think they estimated $95,000 that they had saved the town. So there's been quite a lot of savings, but now they're finding that they need new piece of equipment, and so at some point, they had to raise their rates to make up for the difference, I guess, in the savings that we've had. Not to make up for it, but to start getting them on track to be able to continue to serve.
So the short answer is you think that they are giving us the best price that we are likely to find.
I certainly think that it's a good price, especially compared to what we were paying, and they have been very good working with us.
Responsive and
Very responsive. And
attentive.
I think in general that the
Okay,
highway
yeah, I know we've
department
been very
is
happy with them.
happy
I'm
with
aware
them.
that we've been very happy.
So they did give us a proposal again to smooth out the increase over 5 years, and they didn't actually ask us because the way that it's written is it's a 1-year contract, and they didn't ask us for any guarantees that we would stay with them for the 5 years. Just that if we choose to renew the next year, it would go up by a certain amount.
And another reason, I don't know if everyone recalls when the highway superintendent, Michael O'Connor, came and spoke with you about this. I understand that they use some specific equipment that
Allows the recycling,
that allows
yes.
certain processes and certain methods that
Split-
were
a split
included
packer.
Split
Yeah.
trucks,
were
yeah.
included in the RFP. So that may have been another reason that there weren't more responses.
okay.
I mean, I can't say for certain. It's just there may be other factors despite just lack of notice, which was in accordance with the requirements, that may have led to not getting as many bids as would have been expected.
Now, before I was so rudely interrupted,
Did I interrupt you?
I was asking that because I'd like to know why can't we get more than one bid? We need to do something. We should not just. Of course, I understand that they give you a good price, but we still should have more than one bid if we can.
So we had a conversation about that a couple of minutes ago, and that was how do we notice it? How do we get it out?
That's
Are we
what I
allowed to send it out to
That's
this
all
one or
I
that
was
one?
asking about what you have to do. How do we?
But that's
get
what
out
we
there?
talked about that. We just had the whole conversation about it.
I was listening.
Okay, so and Christy said, well, we can look into and see
Yeah, that's.
if in fact there's other ways that we are allowed to send out to different bidders to get
Yeah.
additional bids. But
The question is
going-
whether you're
I don't think
going to
anybody was
different companies.
interrupting you. I think we all listened to you when we were responding. All I'm saying is that, at this point, we could not accept this bid, and then we're going to be in quite a pickle in
Yeah,
January.
no. I understand about
Okay,
this.
fine. Okay, but you're
But I
saying
mean,
moving
what-
forward,
What
great.
Northern's
Yes,
saying
okay, that's
is,
fine.
and I don't disagree,
Yes,
is that
moving forward, we
it's-
should find out
it's-
how we can
it's
get
difficult
additional
when-
bids.
when you do it the right way, because
Yes.
you're noticing, but for the public that may not understand,
Right.
is there's a certain way that municipalities are required to do a bid, and you can't necessarily do it the way you would do it if you were looking for a contractor for your house. Even if you're getting 3 bids, you can't necessarily solicit certain ones. So when you're relying on a public notice, it's people who read the notice and people who want to go through that process. And oftentimes the result is you get fewer bids than you would like.
Right.
And so it's certainly something we can look into about other mechanisms that would ensure equal distribution. But like the supervisor said, given the time situation, I don't know what approach the board would want to take now that would potentially alleviate.
No, I think it's just going forward to,
Right.
it's a bit of an antiquated process, so
Oh, I
I think that,
completely agree with
that's
you.
what we're, just dealing with overall when you're
Yeah.
dealing with government contracts, so,
I mean, to be honest, I guess if we wanted to, we could ask Suburban, which is our current carding service, if they would provide us a la carte services for a short amount of time if we wanted to try to go out to bid again. I don't know why that would be to their advantage since they're the winning bid. But
Well, if we're not locked in for more than a year, I mean, I think we should
that's true.
accept it, and then we should have a talk about when we go out for our next bid, are we actually limited to the process that we're going to use, or are there other avenues of attracting bidders that we can also explore. Is my thought.
Are we limited to the process that we've been using?
Are we limited, or can we also add other avenues?
Okay, fair enough. So maybe we can get some information about that. Okay. So we're still talking about the budget,
That was the last line.
and that was the last line. Are there any other questions about the budget? Anything? All right. So we've had a public hearing. We've had a budget presentation. We had a work session on the changes, and now we are hoping to adopt the budget on December 11th at a morning meeting. So without further ado, I think we are going to close this work session and move into our special meeting. Correct? Yep. All right. Thank you,
Do
everybody.
you need a motion for that?
Do I need a motion?
No.
Okay, we'll call our special meeting to order.
Okay, I think we can skip the Pledge of Allegiance again. Councilwoman Detory,
Present.
Councilman Wiltshire,
Present.
Councilwoman Feldman,
Present.
and Supervisor Levenberg.
Here.
Okay. Is there any public comment on any agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into board resolutions. Whereas a petition for the extension of Ossining Consolidated Sewer District located at 9.
Are we going to do announcements?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, you should do announcements.
All right, I'm going to do some announcements before we move into those resolutions.
There was no line item. for
I know.
announcements.
it's
I know.
true.
Dana,
I know
I
what
thought-
happens.
I
I got
thought
carried
we were-
away. I
I
got
know,
very
I know.
excited.
Okay, sorry. I'm just going to quickly do some announcements, hopefully. Okay, everybody sit tight. You ready?
Almost.
Quickly. I know, you're so close. I'm sorry. So a few short announcements this evening before we move forward with our special meeting. First, on Thursday, December 7th, right here at 16 Croton Avenue, the Central Committee of Organized War Veterans of the town of Ossining, led by our own Michael O'Connor, welcome all to join in their annual Pearl Harbor Remembrance Celebration. At 12 noon, all will gather to pay homage to the brave men and women who served our country and those who were lost on that fateful day in 1941. Special thanks to Michael G. for organizing this event each year for our community. And I believe Mr. Wiltshire, our deputy supervisor,
Right here.
thank you. This Thursday evening, December 7th, the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series will be screening a film that hits very close to home. Dramatic Escape follows inmates at Sing Sing Correctional Facility for 1 year as they plan a performance of A Few Good Men from behind bars, and will make you consider what it really means to find redemption. The screening begins in the Boudars Theater of the Ossining Public Library at 6:30 p.m. and will be followed by a panel discussion. This is also the last weekend to check out the Westchester Collaborative Theater's production of Fractured Family Tales, a collection of 4 short plays that look at some interesting family dynamics, some familiar and some anything but. Visit wctheater.org to purchase your tickets for Friday, December 8th at 8 p.m. or Saturday, December 9th at 2 p.m. or 8 p.m. I do believe a few of you have now seen that production, right?
It was very enjoyable.
All right. Good reviews. You will not want to miss this great chance to see affordable local talent right here in Ossining, and very talented local talent. On Saturday, December 9th, the Friends of the Ossining Public Library will host a holiday book and gift sale between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. in the gallery area of the library. If you still have some shopping to do, look no further. Proceeds support programming at the library, so be sure to stop by. Also on Saturday the 9th, the Village of Ossining's Recreation Department will host Breakfast with Santa in 2 seatings, one at 10 a.m. and one at 11 a.m. at the Recreation Center. Be sure to call the Recreation Office at 941-3189 to reserve your spot. On Tuesday, December 12th, join the Chabad of Briarcliff Ossining to light the community menorah at Market Square at 6 p.m. All are welcome to enjoy music, latkes, donuts, and chocolate gelt as we welcome the first night of Hanukkah. Finally, please don't forget that while we're all shopping and preparing to host our families for the holidays, there are many in our community who are not as fortunate. We have a Toys for Tots box right here at 16 Croton at the
Oh, you
clerk's office. Since when?
You have a Ossining Boat and Canoe Club Holiday Children's Toy Drive box here right now. We're not working with the Toys for Tots program this year.
Doesn't it
The
say
police
Toys for Tots
is-
right on the outside of it? It says Toys for Tots right on the outside of the box.
It doesn't.
Okay, we're gonna go look at the box before the
Okay.
end of this meeting.
It
I don't wanna
shouldn't.
confirm, but I'm pretty sure I saw the Toys for Tots. But we are collecting toys
We are collecting toys.
for our community.
For children.
Both
Children.
Toys for Tots and the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club are collecting for the Ossining community, and they will end up serving as a group the same children.
Okie doke. So in any case, if you'd like to give gifts to children who need them, and put them in a box, please bring unwrapped toys here and deposit them in the box outside the clerk's office. And they will be distributed to children who need them, who do not have the ability to get lots of toys from maybe their parents or caregivers. So hopefully you will consider doing that as you consider purchasing gifts for others. The Village of Briarcliff and Briarcliff PBA is also holding several drives at Village Hall at 1111 Pleasantville Road through Friday, December 8th. You can also drop off the new or gently used coat for their coat drive there. They're also collecting for their annual toy drive, and all toys will be delivered to the Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital at Westchester Medical Center, so you really cannot go wrong if you bring in some toys unwrapped. Finally, don't forget about all of our local charities and service providers who count on your help, like IFCA and their lovely thrift shop, the Baker Collier Cheer Fund, the Ossining Maker Fund, Teatown Lake Reservation, Galata House, Ossining Matters, the Westchester Children's Foundation, or Association, Neighbors Link, Open Door, and so many more. These organizations are experts in making sure that even the smallest gift can be stretched a long way. And I forgot the Ossining Children's Center. We have a lot of great
And the
organizations
microphone.
here. That's in there. I said that already. So thank you so much for considering others and paying it forward. Okay, now we can go to anybody else have any announcements? To resolutions. All right.
Okay, whereas a petition for the extension of Ossining Consolidated Sewer District, located at 93 Old Albany Post Road in the town of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, dated November 6th, 2017, has been presented to the town board by Angel Quintuna, and whereas an order was duly adopted by the town board on November 14th, 2017, reciting the filing of said petition and specifying November 28th, 2017 at 7:35 p.m. in the Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, as the date, time, and place where the said board would hold a public hearing to consider the petition and to hear all persons interested in the subject matter thereof concerning the same. And whereas such order was duly posted and published as required by law, and whereas a public hearing on the matter was duly held by the town board on November 28th, 2017, where discussion of the matter was had and all persons interested were given the opportunity to be heard, and whereas pursuant to section 194(6) of the town law, the approval of the state controller is not required since the entire burden of the financing of the proposed extension is to be borne by the petitioner, and there is to be no financing borne by the town of Ossining, the Ossining Consolidated Sewer District, or any prior extensions thereof. Now, therefore, be it resolved, A, that the petition is signed and acknowledged as required by law, B, that all the property and property owners within the proposed extension are benefited thereby, C, that all the property and property owners benefited thereby are included, and D, that it is in the public interest to grant the relief sought. And it is further resolved that the extension of the Ossining Consolidated Sewer District in the town of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, as proposed in the petition, be and the same is hereby approved, and that the said sewer district extension include the property as described in the said petition. And it is further resolved that the town clerk shall, within 10 days after adoption of this resolution, file certified copies thereof in duplicate in the office of the State Department of Audit and Control at Albany, New York, and record a certified copy in the office of the clerk of the county of Westchester.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And we had a public hearing on this, and we did not hear any comments, so all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, December 26, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, in the matter of local law number 7 of 2017, entitled Revisions to PACE Financing Law in the town of Ossining.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Just a quick question. So this is gonna be local law number 7 of 2017, but I'm guessing that if we have a public hearing, we might not get to adopt it until the new.
Unless you
year.
adopt it the same night. I mean, you're holding the public hearing that night, you could
Right.
put a resolution on your agenda, and then depending upon the input you receive from the public,
Okay.
you could always table it.
Okay,
Or you could wait till 2018 and we could just change the number.
let's leave it for 2017. I think it would be great to get that passed in 2017, and so we'll be hopeful that there's not a tremendous outpouring of people who are upset about this. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Whereas the town solicited bids for the Senior Nutrition Program meal service to be opened in the office of the town clerk on November 27th, 2017. And whereas the lowest responsible, that should say bidder, was Hubbard's Cupboard, 440 Mamaroneck Avenue, Harrison, New York. Now be it resolved that the town hereby accepts the bid from Hubbard's Cupboard in the amount of $4.79 per meal from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018, with the town reserving the option to extend this contract for an additional 2 years, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019, and January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, respectively, at an increase no more than the Consumer Price Index in each renewal. And be it further resolved that the town board authorizes the supervisor to, that should say sign, a contract with Hubbard's Cupboard in accordance with the above specifications upon the approval of council to the town as to form.
Do I have a motion with those friendly amendments as they were read?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Whereas the town of Ossining has many valuable public spaces in its beautiful parks and has dedicated funding to preserving these community resources in accordance with recommendations from the town's comprehensive plan, including the vacant buildings that were once part of the Cress Estate at Cedar Lane Park. And whereas, in a similar fashion to the rehabilitation of the Shine House and Ice House into the Cedar Lane Arts Center, the remaining Cress Estate buildings, namely the Rubin House and its adjacent greenhouse, require extensive deconstruction and rehabilitation to realize their true potential as community assets. And whereas the town is seeking funding through the Empire State Development Corporation's Restore New York program to complete deconstruction and rehabilitation on the Rubin House and associated greenhouse as the first phase in revitalizing this property. And whereas the Restore New York program requires a 10% local match to be funded by in-kind services of Parks Department staff and cash match to be drawn from the $50,000 impact fee from the extension of the Snowden House pilot agreement and the $50,000 impact fee from the extension of the Maple House pilot agreement, all worthy investments of public resources. And whereas the Rubin House Preservation Project will enhance the community, attracting future private investment, employment opportunities, and overall economic development, resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining supports the preservation of the Rubin House and the public investment required by the Restore New York grant program to facilitate New York State funding, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor's office is hereby directed to submit an application to the Restore New York grant program for the deconstruction and rehabilitation of the Rubin House at Cedar Lane Park.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
So I know there have been a couple of questions about the nature of this resolution. I want to clarify by reading from the grant guidelines. The municipality's legislative body must pass a resolution finding that the proposed project is consistent with the municipality's local revitalization or urban development plan, that the proposed financing is appropriate for the specific project, that the project facilitates effective and efficient use of existing and future public resources so as to promote both economic development and preservation of community resources, and the project develops and enhances infrastructure and or other facilities in a manner that will attract, create, and sustain employment opportunities where applicable. So we are essentially telling the state that the town board would be comfortable proceeding with the project to deconstruct and rehabilitate the space. This is a phase one, basically, of this project, as prescribed in the grant application, if and only if we receive the requisite funding. So we can't move forward with this, and we don't have plans, we don't have the big grand scheme for what's going to happen with this building once it's in shape to go forward, and for that we would be soliciting public input. So we don't have that plan yet, and we're not approving any specific plan except for, again, to get it in shape to do something with it. That's what the grant would afford us, and based on the costs associated with removal of asbestos and lead and site work and all the other stuff that needs to take place, which is quite a lot. It is a costly venture just to get it into shape for the next step, whatever that might be.
When you say get it into shape, you mean demolish it?
Yeah, basically demolish it, stabilize parts of it. We're
Right.
hoping to, hopefully we can retain the foundation
Right.
and maybe specific elements of it. And we're hoping that we might be able to retain parts of the greenhouse and maybe even shore up the back of it in some way, so that we can have, something that, some kind of rentable space, even in the greenhouse, where we could potentially then start to think about raising money to rehabilitate the other structure into something that would then be of public benefit.
Okay.
And an improvement to the park. Okay?
Okay.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is that it? That's it. All right. So, thank you, everyone. I did have one additional announcement that I wanted to make, or statement rather. So, this week and last, multiple community members had brought to my attention and to the attention of the Town of Austin Board that work was going on in the past week or so on the Sunshine Children's Home property, which included drilling, demolition, and tree work. These residents expressed concerns that this work was happening in conjunction with the application for expansion that is still under review with the Newcastle ZBA, and or that it was work that was not permitted. Residents expressed concerns specifically about the impact that the work could potentially have on the local environment and the water table. I promptly investigated by reaching out to the planning department in Newcastle, who shared with me that it was their understanding that the drilling work was being done to a well that was already permitted by the County Department of Health and did not require town permitting. Nevertheless, they had called for the work to cease until they could investigate further, specifically regarding the demolition and tree removal, and they were still in the process of investigating when I spoke to them yesterday. Today I spoke with the Assistant Commissioner in the Westchester County Department of Health to find out about the permitting process for the well. They reiterated that when a well currently in operation gets upgraded, the work being done only requires the Department of Health to receive notification. That notification was received. When such work is done to an existing permitted well, the well must be taken out of service. Then before it goes back into service, it needs to be tested, and the tests reviewed by the Department of Health and approved before it may go back into service. This type of work, according to the department, takes place throughout Westchester County on a regular basis. They do not anticipate it would have any additional impact on the aquifer, as the approved pump that is currently used in the permitted well may only pump out a certain volume of water, and that would not change based on the upgrades to the existing well. As far as the impact the silver mine might have on the water, according to the Village of Austin Water Superintendent, silver has never shown up in any of the annual water tests of the Indian Brook water, so he does not believe there is need for concern. At this point, it appears, as far as the drilling, that Sunshine is following all proper legal processes. We will continue to closely monitor the situation and appreciate the concern that residents have shared with us for the environment. And that's it.
Just about everybody out there is on a well, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're on a well, but they're concerned that it's going to impact the aquifer that
Yeah, I
feeds
can
their
I
wells.
can understand that.
But again, I have to say that we were reassured, I was reassured by both Department of Health as well as, our.
That the well that they were
Um,
working on was an active well?
That it doesn't, it was an active well, yeah, that was that wasn't the one, the well number 3, which, you know, had radon, I mean, there are a whole lot of different issues that have come up, but that was not, one of them, and so that's it. Anyway, if I could have a motion to adjourn into executive session for personnel regarding specific individuals, advice of counsel and contracts, I would greatly appreciate that.
So moved.
Second.
I knew it wasn't coming from Mr. Wilson. Okay. I hope everyone has a great week. And as a reminder, the town board will not be meeting as scheduled on Tuesday, December 12th, but in observance of the first night of Hanukkah. But rather, we will meet on the morning of Monday, December 11th at 8:30 a.m. next week for a short work session and special meeting right in this very room where we will approve the voucher detail report and adopt the 2018 budget, we hope. And then we will adjourn into executive session to interview several candidates for our town board vacancy. We will also have a meeting in which we go directly into executive session on Wednesday, December 13th at 6:30 p.m. for the same purpose, to interview candidates. We've gotten many impressive resumes from folks who are looking to serve their community, and I anticipate it won't be long before we find and appoint a new town board member to serve in 2018. So thank you to all who've applied, and have a great week, everybody. Thank you.